Hey everybody, it's Peter, and in this video we're going to compare two dual sport, street and trail, adventure-y type bikes, basically on-off-road bikes, and I'm going to compare them in detail because they're closer in price than you think, and sometimes people think one is better for a certain activity than another, and we're going to go through the details. So first of all, this is the KLX 300. We're going to compare it to the KLR, which happens to be a 650, and we're filming here at Wheels and Deals. Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports gives me complete access to their entire vehicle line. So if you have questions about either of these vehicles, let me know in the comments below, and make sure you hit subscribe because a lot of the time I'll take your comments and turn that into a future video that helps you out. So I want to thank Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports for access to their vehicles. Let's get going with the review. So the appeal to both of these bikes is they are both street legal bikes that are made to handle the dirt. But what type of dirt they can handle can be a little different. Now, here's the thing. If you're an amazing rider, you can ride this KLR down any trail you want. For most of us, this isn't going to hit the same kind of off-road that this KLX will, but we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons of each so that you can make a decision on which one's best for you. So first of all, let's talk about the KLX 300. Both of these are single-cylinder bikes. This one looks a lot more like a dirt bike with lights and other things. So we're going to take a look at the dash here because you actually get, in my mind, a better dash here than you do in the KLR. The KLR has a lot of history, of course, but the KLR is really classed more as an adventure bike, and that's sort of a newer term, at least newer than the KLR concept. When the KLR first came out, it was just a larger, street bike slash dirt bike, trail bike, whatever you wanted to call it. But it's moved into the adventure class. This one is going to give you some advantages with this new updated look, fuel injection now in here. It's going to give you some advantages over a bike like that, but it's also got some disadvantages to a bike like that. So we're going to talk about some of those advantages by starting with taking a look at the KLX 300 and then moving towards this bike. So let's first take a really close look at the KLX 300. So the KLX 300, in my mind, is really well suited to not just dirt roads, but also the trails. This is really sort of a mature dirt bike. It's ready to go on any kind of roads that you would want, whether that's street, whether that's gravel roads, whether that's just bad roads, or if it's a trail. And the first thing you're going to notice when you slide across this is its narrowness and its lightness. It's a very lightweight bike that's easy to ride for a lot of people. A lot of people feel this is a great sort of first motorcycle because it's not too intimidating with its power, although neither is the KLR. It does seem to be a little tall, but you'll see as I jump across here, it does collapse on the suspension a little bit. It is a fairly tall first bike, but again, very, very controllable. And then the panels on all this are a lot like a dirt bike, so they're very flexible. They can take a little bit of a punishment if you did drop this bike. Nothing is too expensive to repair, simple mirrors, simple situation here. And a lot of this, even if it made contact with the ground, you can kind of pick that bike up and deal with it and keep going. So this bike is a bike that is very good for trails and certainly capable on any off-road. Where this bike lacks compared to the KLR is really in a second passenger, allowing them to be comfortable. Although legally you can take one here, it is a much smaller seat and it really doesn't have any cargo carrying capacity as is. Now there's things you can do to modify it, but again, by the time you start spending the money to modify, you might be into KLR money. So these two bikes are about $1,000 different as equipped. This one costs a little bit more with its paint scheme here, and the KLR is the entry-level KLR. So again, if you are taking extra gear with you, going on longer trips, this bike is going to have some trouble. But if you just want a bike to blast around all kinds of on and off road, this might be a better bike for you. We'll talk about some of those advantages in a second. Let's bring the KLR in, show you a couple features there, and then we're going to look at some of the specifics. And we're going to start with the dash on both these bikes because, like I said, ironically, this one might have the better dash over the KLR. So back to back comparing these two, obviously you know it on camera before watching this video, the KLR is a much larger bike, but practically speaking, some of that largeness comes to this stuff, and this overall cargo carrying section is very, very good because not only do you have this this rack back here which you can equip with various accessories to carry just about everything you need, you also can add side bags, you can add anything you want. And what I like about the overall style of this is the overall panel here is level with the seat. So even if you just wanted to throw on a typical duffel sack that's not motorcycle gear, you've got lots of places to strap this on, make sure it's secure. It just makes everything really simple to take stuff with you. And again, it's a wider seat as well. So I'm going to jump on this one as well. This is also a tall bike. Now the difference with this bike is for the same price, you can get the KLR S. And a lot of our viewers have pointed out it doesn't say S for shorter because shorter on a typical bike means shorter in length, but the S is really a shorter version, shorter as in lower to the ground. So there is an S version of this that would place me more flat-footed. I am slightly tippy-toed. I'm about 6 feet tall on this. And overall, you feel a lot of difference on this. It is a heavier bike with a massive fuel tank. This fuel tank, I believe, is 23 liters. That one is maybe, it's less than half. It might only be just a hair over a third of that, but it's a much smaller, maybe it's not less than that, but it is a much smaller tank. So fuel range here is a real bonus on this bike, but a fuel tank that's 23 liters that's filled up can also create more mass up high. So there is a different feeling. Now to control that mass, you have almost laughably wide handlebars. These are by far the widest handlebars of any Kawasaki bike that I've been on. And it is, again, a real commanding position that allows you to feel like you're very much in control. The other benefit here is wind protection. If you're going on longer highway trips, you do have that extra wind protection. We'll show you the dash in a second, where the dash itself may not be as good as the KLX, but the features around do add some flexibility and some features there as well. This bike is going to be really good in my mind, on the gravel roads, that kind of thing. The tighter trails, you're going to want to make sure you have some skill to handle this. Now, again, there are KLR owners for decades that have taken these things around the world where there is no trail, there is no road, and they've done just fine on this. But I think the general feeling for the average rider is that one behind me is going to be really good for those tighter trails and perfectly fine on dirt roads. This one's going to be perfectly fine on dirt roads, but probably give you a little bit more security, but it's really going to stretch its legs better on highway roads, on road, and it really is the go anywhere on any type of road bike to the average rider. Once you start getting into technical trails, the average rider is going to be able to handle that a little bit better. So let's look at the dash on both these and compare some of the differences that I think are strengths and weaknesses in each one. All right, so as I'm filming here, I'm realizing that my watch, which I also film with, which is a sort of extra little display screen, that my sweatshirt might be touching it and causing it to zoom out or in. So I hope it's not zooming out so much. I am running out of time in the day to film this again. So hopefully that zooming in, zooming out doesn't affect the video watching too much. I do apologize for that if it's been going on. Let's take a look at the dash here. You've got a little bit of glare here. Let's see if we can just kind of adjust that. Well, we've got it with the studio lights. Not a big deal with the studio lights. Over here, there is no gear position indicator like you may think that there should be in this type of dash. Let's just come down a little bit and change the angle here so we can try. There we go. There's the better look at the dash. I apologize, guys. Like I said, I am working on a tighter schedule today than I normally am. So over here, a lot of people think there should be a gear indicator. There is not. The other thing that's kind of missing from this bike that surprises people is this doesn't have a tachometer. Now, this is a single-cylinder 650cc engine. What that means is that this engine creates a lot of torque without having to rev out to the top end of the limit. So something like a Kawasaki Ninja is going to really need you to rev to the top, and knowing where the red line is on that kind of bike is important. On this kind of bike, you're going to feel very much to be in the torque and then feel naturally where the shift is. I would still like a tack on this. I feel it's something they've sort of should have put on this that they didn't. But again, it is what it is. It kind of comes with what it comes with. So pretty basic dash here with the clock, the odometer, fuel gauge, which is nice to have. But as we zoom out from this, and this time I'll be zooming intentionally, there we go, you will see that this fairing offers quite a bit. So we'll come out like this. On the Adventure model, you could have a USB portion right here where you could pop that out, plug a USB in over here. On the far side over here, you can see on the right, there is a space to put switches, which again, on the Adventure model, you would put your sort of fog light switches on or driving light switches, and there's a place to put a USB port. Those are all sort of pre-cutouts. They're sort of dummy areas right now, but you can accessorize this bike with a lot of different things, and it's ready to go. That wind protection of the wind screen here also is nice, and this little extra bar up here. If you were to add a little GPS, you could mount it here on the handlebar, you could mount it up here. There's ways to mount accessories to this. This is much more of a longer trip bike than the KLX, and that's one thing to keep in mind. If the type of off-road riding you're going to do involves longer trips, from the seat to the wind protection to the accessories in the future, this is going to be a better bike for that. So taking a look at the KLX 300, this is a more interesting dash to me. As you can see, as I turn it on there, you've got a tachometer on the top. So this one really gives you all the same information as the other bike, but you lose a fuel gauge. Now, would you rather have a fuel gauge or would you rather have a tachometer? It still has the fuel light, so you will be told when your fuel is very low. But to me, as long as I got a light, I think if I had to have one or the other, I'd rather have the tachometer. So again, neither one is perfect, but both are simple and well protected. As we zoom out on this bike, we'll come back to this look. You can see there is no wind protection here other than just a little cover for those gauges there. And again, this is less of a good long road bike. Doesn't mean you can't go a long ways on this. Doesn't mean you can't, handle this bike for a longer trip. But overall seating space, overall, extra things around here, you do have less protection. So that's one of the biggest things you're going to notice between these two bikes is the lighter weight and the less wind protection, less big tank, and less comfy seat for a longer trip is going to make the KLX less of an ideal trip bike for those longer trips. Now that being said, this is still the one you're going to want to choose because it has less of everything. That does make it easier to handle on the tighter trails. Let's look at a couple other little features here. So I don't normally talk about pricing on these videos because pricing can change over time and I don't want these videos to go out of date. So bear with me, but at the time that I'm filming this, which is February of 2023, this is a 2023 KLX 300. It does have this Digi Camo paint scheme, so that does cost a little bit extra. It is $7,099 plus fees and taxes. So this one over here is the entry-level KLR. It's $7,999 with the same pricing structure, not including some of those fees and taxes. So about $1,000 difference, but if you start looking at things, a lot of time if you had a bike like this and a bike like this, and you said, okay, we're gonna add LED lighting, extra wind protection, large fuel tank, that alone would be the price difference. This one here has the halogen lighting, which again is perfectly fine and acceptable, but you start getting into that pricing segment where the adventure bike comes into play. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this video. A lot of people are trying to buy this bike and do longer and longer on and off-road adventures when they're forgetting about this bike here. Adventure bikes as a class are usually $20,000 or more. And I think sometimes people forget that this KLR is a very, very practical bike that allows you to do those longer types of trips. So let's take a look at a couple other features within the bikes for off-road and on-road because again, I've been underselling the KLX and I think the KLX has some really strong points as well. So let's talk about some of those as we dig into some of the engine, transmission, other areas there where this one's really strong. So I mentioned earlier that both of these bikes have single-cylinder engines. Now, one of the benefits with a smaller single-cylinder is it creates this kind of thumpy sound without creating a ton of vibrations. The larger the single-cylinder engine, the more types of vibrations you have at certain speeds. So this one is a little bit more of a buzz, where the other one's a little bit more of a thump, and that thump can turn to a vibration at high revs. Driving this on the highway, it's a screamer. Driving that on the highway, it's a thumper, and they're different ways. So a couple things I like about this engine. It's small, it's kind of, that buzz is kind of dirt bike friendly, and this isn't like dirt bike loud, so it's very quiet, refined engine, and it is liquid cooled, so you have that consistency in the temperature that you want. The other thing that I like is this one has some real solid metal bars all around here. So if you're gonna take this off of the roads onto the trails where you've got some real obstacles, you really are well equipped to kind of bash into things. This one has metal foot pegs, the other one has metal foot pegs with rubber inserts. Again, one's more highway suited, but again, you've got the ability to kind of just drop this bike, pick it up because it's lightweight, and keep going. This one is absolutely a blast to take anywhere you want, including going well off-road down the trails and finding places that you just can't get to without roads. That's where this one is really, really strong. As we look at the KLR, you can see that dropping this bike would be a couple things. It's a little tougher to pick up because of the weight. It's a little bit more emotionally damaging to see some scratches on this more shiny paint. And although you have some good frame rails underneath here, really you're hitting this plastic as much as anything else here. Rubber foot pegs, again, nice for the highway. I may have oversold the vibrations of this on the highway, but I do want to point out that If you're buying a road highway bike in the 650 class and you want something with this kind of seating position, the Versus 650 is the way to go. This one is still an all-purpose bike. And when I first did my first video on the KLRs here at Wheels and Deals, I talked about how this bike is good at everything, but not great at anything. So everything that this bike does, there is a way to get a better bike doing that one thing than this. So for instance, if you were just going off-road and you wanted lights, the KLX is better. If you were just going on-road with a 650 and wanted the wind protection and seating position, the Versus 650 is better. The ability to do both is what makes this strong. It's the true jack of all trades, master of none. So there are compromises with this bike, but the value is really here as well. So again, big thumper engine, not a whole lot of modern technology in this. They did bring in fuel injection, that kind of thing, but this is still the basic same thing they've had since the 1980s. That shouldn't matter to you in a motorcycle. Motorcycles, you know, they're not like cars where, you know, sometimes you have to update that engine just to prove to people you've got the newest, latest, and greatest. Reliability is a piece of this. You know, these things have gone around the world with these engines thumping the whole way, and that works great. But you have a lot different bodywork look here, and again, that weight. One thing that's kind of nice is I just bought the Z900 RS. It's a street bike. It's going to take passengers, that kind of thing. It has rubber pads on the front for the driver on the foot pegs, but not on the back. This one has the rubber pads here on the back as well. So again, they're thinking about a passenger on this bike more so than on some other bikes. So this has been a basic overview of each of these bikes, and I'm going to talk next about who these bikes are best for. But before I go too far, if I haven't given you enough of a review, I've done reviews of each of these bikes in a better detailed view individually on this channel. So make sure you search Peter Lowe 1, which is my channel, and search the names of these bikes, and you'll see everything I've done on them, because even what I've done so far, I'm going to continue to make more and more videos on this. So if you're watching this even a year or two from now, I'll have made more and more videos. So you can search my channel for that. But let's talk about who these bikes are for. Well, they're for a lot of people, but I think one of the things that I want to point out both of these bikes for is if you want a trail bike or a second bike or something like that, that you can kind of take on the road and do everything, this is probably your best bet. It is a great value. It is an updated version of a bike. The KLR has been updated as well in bodywork and everything else, but most of that engine is still basically the same as it was before. The KLX used to be sort of 250s and that kind of thing. They're up to 300 now, and that 300cc makes a difference. You've got the power you need to go full-on highway speeds, to country highway speeds, and then again, the lightweight, comfort, maneuverability to do all of that trail type riding. This is something you can stand up out of the saddle, get in the saddle, and have a lot of fun. And like I said, this will take you to places where there are no roads. This one here, again, unless you're a super skilled rider, it is a large motorcycle, and I think this one will take you to anywhere where there are roads. Now again, there are plenty of trails that are groomed enough that I would feel totally comfortable riding this on as well. But the real difference here is this can take you anywhere for a very long time. The large fuel tank, the larger seat, the larger wind protection, the larger overall motorcycle makes this better. What's interesting to me is sometimes people are saying, oh, I want to add a dual sport or a street and trail type bike to my lineup, or I want to, add this to our family of bikes or something like that. And in that case, the price difference between these two might make this something you should consider. It's not that much more expensive. You do see the value in price. Like I said, adding those LED lights, the extra bodywork, the extra power, the extra luggage capacity, those kinds of things make this a pretty good value over that, and it really changes the character of the bike, where you can still go on and off-road, but now you can tour. So I don't know if this is an ad for this bike as a great all-rounder, because I absolutely love this bike. I call it my favorite bike of 2023, or 2022 that I reviewed last year. Oh, I'm hitting the sign here, better not do that. But I also love this bike, and I always kind of thought this would be a bike I would love to have as a second bike, but for the price difference, now I'm not so sure. So again, depending on the type of riding you want to do, if you want to have some fun, light trails, this thing's great. You're probably not going to ride this for 3 days in a row, 8 hours a day. If you wanted to, you could do that with this. So there you go. Let me know what you think. Which one of these is a better bike for you? Which one of these is best? You know, am I wrong? I know some of you guys are going to say, hey, this thing's a perfectly capable trail bike, and you're probably right. I'm just not sure that I would do that. But yeah, it just sort of depends on what you like. So let me know what you think of these bikes. Let me know your opinions on how you would ride them and which one you'd rather have if you could have it as a second bike. You had a street bike for something, maybe for performance, but you had to add these. Which one would you add if you could do that? Let me know in the comments. And again, if you want to know more questions, I'll answer them. If you want to know more about these bikes, I'll answer your questions in the comments. And of course, in future videos, thanks to Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals. Have a good day, everybody. Sorry about the zooming in and out. We had a very snowy day here. I got a little behind, but I'm getting these done as best as I can. We'll catch you in the next one.